In this video, I'm going to explain how you form the present tense in French using ER, IR and RE verbs. Can I suggest before watching this video, you first watch my other video, which is only about ER verbs in the present tense. So in the previous video, talking about ER verbs, I mentioned how the present tense in English refers to actions happening in the present. So for example, I speak or I'm speaking. In French, you only have one option for I speak and I'm speaking. French doesn't have a present continuous such as I'm speaking. They just use one verb for both. So on the screen you can see the example of parler with the appropriate endings underlined in red. So parler, the infinitive, means to talk or to speak. Je parle means I speak, I talk. Tu parles, you speak or you talk. Il, elle, on parle, he, she or one talks. Nous parlons, we talk. Vous parlez, you plural talk. And il, elle parle, they talk. So in the previous video I mentioned how we start with the infinitive. Step 1 is to remove the ER and step 2 is to add the appropriate ending. This should hopefully look quite familiar. Here you can see the process but in a pictorial form. In the plant pot we have the infinitive, parler. Step 1, where it moves into the stem, I've removed the ER. And then in the petals of the flower you can see which endings we need to add depending on who is doing the verb. So this flower, this diagram is purely about verbs in French which end with ER. And there's many of them which do. They will all follow this pattern. So if a verb ends with an ER in French and it's a regular verb, that means it follows the pattern, then these are the endings we simply need to add to use it and to conjugate it for ourselves. Here you can see the endings in red again. Once again, this is still about ER verbs, the one type of verb. It might help you to learn them, to think of the sentence, elephants especially enjoy onshore breezes in Kent. This is a little trick that might help you to remember which endings to add for which pronoun. And by pronoun I mean who's doing the verb. For example, is it je, I, is it nous, we? And we have the endings on the screen in red that you need to add in step 2. Remember, step 1 is remove the ER, step 2 is to add the correct ending in red. Here's some final examples before we look at the other types of verb. So on the screen, Tex et Tammy dansent, which means Tex and Tammy are dancing. Here you can see the verb danser, where I removed the ER and then we've added an ENT because we're trying to say that they dance. Joe Bob mange beaucoup. Joe Bob eats or is eating a lot. Here you can see manger, the verb, where I've removed the ER, and because it's Joe Bob he, I've simply added an E. We use the same rules even if we're asking a question. So, parlez-vous français? Do you speak French? Here we've got the verb parler, to speak. Because I'm asking, do you speak French? I've removed the ER and added an EZ for do you speak French? Parlez-vous français? And one final example, Tex écoute de la musique rap. This is the verb écouter, to listen, but because it's Tex who's listening to the rap music, which is effectively he, I've removed the ER and simply added an E in its place. So Tex écoute de la musique rap. Okay, so now we're ready to look at the different types of verb in French. On the screen you can see ER, IR and RE. Basically, every single verb in French will end with one of these three endings. So far, we've only talked about the verbs which end with ER, but now we're going to introduce what we do with verbs that end with an IR or verbs that end with an RE. You can see the orange column should look very familiar. So ER verbs, step 1 is we remove the ER, and those are the endings that we add. So remember that sentence, elephants especially enjoy onshore breezes in Kent. Now for IR and RE verbs, it's basically the same process. Step 1 is still to remove either the IR or the RE, depending on which verb you're dealing with. And step 2 is still to add the appropriate ending. All that's changed is you can see that the endings that we add are different. So whereas previously with ER verbs, we removed the ER, and for example, if we wanted to say je, I, we added an E. For an IR verb, we remove the IR, but we don't add an E, instead we add an IS. And if it's an RE verb, we remove the RE and we then add an S. And you'll notice that there is one blank box on the screen. That is because for the il, elle and on, for he, she and one, with RE verbs, we remove the RE and then we actually add nothing at all. Okay, so that is the ending. The ending is simply add nothing. So we've got the different verbs on the screen again. So I've started with jouer, an ER verb. Step 1, I remove the ER. And step 2, because I want to say I play or I'm playing, I've added an E and I've created je joue. Let's take another verb now, finir. Now this is an IR verb because it ends with an IR. Step 1 is exactly the same. Remove the IR. That leaves me with simply the stem fin. Step 2 is to add the correct ending. And if you check the table, you can see that with je, we add an IS. So I've created je finis, I finish or I am finishing. And thirdly and finally, an RE verb. Vendre means to sell, but I want to say I sell or I'm selling. Step 1, remove the RE, leaving me with the stem vend. And step 2, add the correct ending. And for an RE verb in the je form, I simply need to add an S. So once you understand the process, that step 1 is to remove and then step 2 is to add the correct ending, you simply have to set about trying to learn the endings. There's a few different ways you might learn them. For some people, they have a very photographic memory. For other people, it works well simply writing them out numerous times. Sometimes it works for people thinking of a silly sentence. For example, the elephants especially enjoy onshore breezes in Kent to help them learn the different endings. You need to experiment and find which is the best method for you to help you memorise them, but you do need to memorise them. You need to be able to conjugate verbs all by yourself without any notes to help you. Let's try a little bit of practice. On the screen, I've got 4 questions. I want you to try and conjugate them for yourself. Basically do the step 1 and step 2 process. Press pause and then press play when you're ready to see the answers. Here you can see the answers on the screen. So for each one, I've done the 2-step process. I first removed the ending of the verb, so either ER, RE or IR. Step 2 is then to add the correct ending. So for the first one, nous jouer, I removed the ER, and because it was nous with an ER verb, I knew to add an ONS. Nous jouons, we play. For the second one, I removed the RE, and this time I added an EZ. With the third one, this is an IR verb, so I removed the IR, and I knew to add a finis, an ISSENT. And the fourth one, finally, is an RE verb again. So I removed the RE, and then because it's 2, I've consulted the table, and I know that I need to add an S to complete my conjugation.